Amid the crimson mountain range, waves of intense heat surged upward, making the peaks appear as though they were ablaze, shining brilliantly from a distance. At that moment, Lin Dong's gaze was fixated on a colossal cauldron hovering over the mountains. The cauldron was a deep crimson hue, covered in flame-like patterns on its surface. It radiated intense heat, as if it intended to burn the very sky itself. Clearly, this cauldron was the place where Lin Dong and his companions had been trapped earlier. Whoosh! Shortly after Lin Dong arrived in the mountainous region, 3 more figures swiftly appeared nearby: Ling Qingzhu, Yuan Cang, and another. Moments later, the space around the mountains began to warp as countless figures were ejected from the twisted space. Within minutes, the once quiet sky above the mountain range was filled with people. As the masses appeared, the area immediately became noisy. Many cast cautious glances around, some still bearing traces of blood on their bodies, evidence that their time within the heaven-scorching formation had not been easy. Lin Dong. A joyful voice rang out amidst the sea of people. Lin Dong turned to see Ying Xiaoxiao, Ying Huanhuan, and Wang Yin leading a group toward him. "Are you all right?" Seeing that the 3 were unharmed, Lin Dong breathed a sigh of relief and quickly asked, "We're fine. This ancient vault of heaven burning is far stranger than we expected." Ying Xiaoxiao shook her head, her expression grim, clearly having experienced the terrifying power of the heaven-scorching formation. Lin Dong. Another cheerful voice sounded from a distance. Lin Dong turned to see Fen Tian and Chen Gui rushing toward him. Seeing them approach, Lin Dong finally relaxed completely. Fortunately, no one in his group had been harmed. The sky was in chaos, with forces from all sides quickly gathering. The cacophony of voices seemed to roar across the heavens. "Stay on guard," Lin Dong murmured, his eyes scanning the chaotic sky before focusing on the gigantic cauldron. Though it was a precious treasure, he doubted it alone could suppress the unknown creature lurking within. "If anything goes wrong, leave immediately," Lin Dong warned. The ancient vault of heaven burning was nothing like what people thought, full of treasures. Instead, it hid a deadly Shura demon. Ying Xiaoxiao and the others glanced at Lin Dong's serious expression. Though they were a little puzzled, they nodded in agreement. "Lin Dong, look over there." Ying Huanhuan suddenly pursed her lips and pointed toward the tallest mountain in the range. Even from a distance, they could see molten lava flowing down the peak. It was clearly an active volcano. Lin Dong narrowed his eyes and followed Ying Huanhuan's gaze. A moment later, his eyes locked onto a figure sitting amidst the molten lava atop the mountain. "There's someone here?" Lin Dong's expression shifted as he stared at the withered figure draped in crimson robes. He could feel no trace of life from the figure. It seemed to be nothing more than a dried corpse. "Dead," Lin Dong muttered.
"No."
Ying Huanhuan shook her head slightly, her eyes gleaming with a faint blue light. He's not entirely dead." "Not entirely dead?" Lin Dong was momentarily taken aback by her odd statement. Someone was either dead or alive, so how could someone be not entirely dead? "I'm not sure, but I can still sense a faint trace of life within him, and his aura feels somewhat familiar," Ying Huanhuan murmured, her delicate brows furrowing as she spoke. Her last sentence was barely audible, but Lin Dong heard it clearly. Ying Huanhuan could not have seen this crimson-robed figure before, but that didn't mean that the owner of her past life, before reincarnation, hadn't. That strange sense of familiarity could very well stem from her previous incarnation. Could she have known this person in her past life? Boom. Just as Lin Dong's gaze remained fixed on the figure in the molten lava, the crimson cauldron in the sky suddenly trembled violently. A deafening clash echoed across the mountains. "Ha! Ha! Old heaven burner, do you really think this broken cauldron can still hold me?" As the cauldron quivered, a sea of black mist erupted from within. A shrill, sinister laughter echoed through the mountains, laced with chilling malice. The black mist began to coalesce outside the cauldron, faint flashes of crimson light flickering within it, like the eyes of a demon, radiating fear wherever they gazed. So many ants. The crimson glow swept across the sky, and a sinister voice rang out from the black mist. In the next instant, countless black beams of light shot out from the mist. Zap! Zap! The black beams were as fast as lightning, piercing through those who failed to dodge in time. To everyone's horror, the bodies of those struck began to wither rapidly, crumbling into ashes within moments. Panic swept across the sky, and terror spread on everyone's faces. Run! Lin Dong took a deep breath and commanded calmly. It was clear that the ancient creature that had survived through the ages was beyond anything they could handle. Staying here would be suicidal. EngSubs and the others quickly nodded, feeling the overwhelming sense of danger from the black mist. They retreated swiftly, with black beams of light streaking past them. Anyone struck by the beams had no chance to resist, turning to ashes instantly. The sky became a storm of gray ash, like a grim, deathly rain. Lin Dong remained at the back of the group, his eyes scanning the relentless barrage of black beams. His pupils suddenly contracted as one beam locked onto him, hurtling directly at him. As the beam rushed toward him, Lin Dong's expression grew tense. He wasn't confident he could withstand the strange, eerie energy behind the attack. But just as he was preparing to block it, a slender figure leapt in front of him, Ying Huanhuan, her ponytail swaying in the air. You! Lin Dong was startled by her sudden move, about to rebuke her when she shook her head gently and said softly, "You can't stop that." Lin Dong froze, not because of her words, but because her voice had taken on a bone-chilling coldness that wasn't her own. Whoosh! The black beam shot toward them, and Lin Dong noticed that Ying Huanhuan's eyes were slowly turning icy blue. With her black hair starting to change color as well, Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly. He clenched his fist, and a black tree trunk flashed into his hand. It was clear that if the situation turned for the worse, he was ready to act without hesitation. At this point, there was no room for concern about whether or not he could stop this strange black beam. Whoosh! In the next instant, the black beam shot towards them, its deadly energy radiating ominously in the reflections of Lin Dong and the others' eyes. Shoo! Just as the black beam was about to strike Ying Huanhuan, the figure sitting atop the distant mountain, wrapped in crimson robes, suddenly opened his eyes. A flicker of light emerged from the deep hollows of his sunken eye sockets. Ice! Ice Lord! The crimson-robed figure raised his head, his gaze piercing through space until it landed on Ying Huanhuan. An ancient, hoarse voice, tinged with confusion, slowly echoed from his lips. The black beam descended with terrifying deathly energy, even causing Lin Dong's expression to change. This was an attack beyond their ability to withstand. Ying Huanhuan bit her lip and placed her hand on her Sky Phoenix zither, preparing to intercept the attack. However, just as she was about to act, the space in front of her warped. A crimson-robed figure suddenly appeared before her, grabbing the black beam and crushing it with his bare hand. The sudden turn of events left Lin Dong and the others stunned. Their eyes quickly focused on the crimson-robed figure, and Lin Dong's pupils shrank slightly as he realized that this was the same figure who had been sitting in the molten lava moments before. He's really alive, Lin Dong felt a cold sweat break out. Even he had to be cautious of these ancient monsters. The crimson-robed man had blocked the black beam, yet his hollow eyes remained fixed on Ying Huanhuan. His withered face bore a trace of confusion, as though deep in thought. After a long while, his lips moved, but no sound came out. Ying Huanhuan looked curiously at the crimson-robed figure who had helped them. Strangely, despite his ancient and mysterious origins, she felt no fear at all in his presence. As she and the crimson-robed figure exchanged gazes, Lin Dong quickly pulled her behind him, gripping the black tree trunk tightly. His eyes were wary, and he clasped his fists in a gesture of respect. "Senior, we mean no offense. We will leave immediately." At this closer distance, Lin Dong could sense that the man's aura was incredibly peculiar. It didn't feel like a living person's. Instead, it was closer to a half-dead state, almost like a demon corpse, yet somehow retaining a hint of wisdom. A bizarre state of half-life and half-death. The crimson-robed figure seemed not to hear Lin Dong's words. His gaze remained locked on Ying Huanhuan, making EngSubs and the others tense, their primordial energy surging quietly. Suddenly, the crimson-robed figure gave Ying Huanhuan a slight bow. Without saying a word, he turned and began walking through the air toward the black mist creature raging in the sky. Ying Xiaoxiao and the others stared in confusion at the scene unfolding before them. They glanced at the equally bewildered Ying Huanhuan, clearly not understanding why the crimson-robed figure had treated her with such respect. Lin Dong's clenched fists slowly relaxed. It seemed that this ancient figure had recognized Ying Huanhuan's identity from before her reincarnation. Judging by his behavior, Ying Huanhuan must have held an incredibly high status in her previous life for even this half-dead being to show her such deference. What is he planning to do? Wang Yin asked, watching the crimson-robed figure approach the black mist creature. Lin Dong's gaze also followed the figure. From the looks of it, the crimson-robed man was preparing to take on the black mist creature. Boom! As Lin Dong and the others looked on, vast primordial energy, like a sea of fire, erupted from the crimson-robed figure's body. It surged outward, forming a massive wall of flames that encased the black mist creature. Zap! Zap! The black beams struck the firewall repeatedly, but their earlier unstoppable power had vanished. Instead, the flames incinerated the beams, releasing sharp hissing sounds. Old Heaven Burner, after all these years, you've ended up in this half-dead, half-alive state. Huh. I suppose you failed the reincarnation calamity. A shrill voice emanated from the swirling black mist. The crimson glow of eyes locked onto the crimson-robed figure as sinister laughter echoed across the sky. I live only to suppress you. The crimson-robed man raised his head, and the previously vacant look in his eyes sharpened. His hoarse voice rang out slowly. Suppress me? Huh. You pathetic creatures. If it weren't for that fool burning his reincarnation to seal the dimensional rift, your world would have long ceased to exist. The black mist churned, its voice sharp and cutting. But in the end, we won. And this time, I will suppress you again. The crimson-robed man's voice was raspy, but resolute. He raised his hand, and the enormous cauldron in the sky suddenly descended with a deafening roar. Torrents of flame erupted from its mouth, rushing toward the black mist creature. You feeble beings dare talk of suppressing me again. The black mist surged violently, transforming into a massive hand that spanned 1,000 feet. It swatted away the incoming flames with a single strike. Whoosh! Whoosh! Countless massive pillars of flame shot out from the cauldron, forming a towering fiery formation that enveloped the black mist creature. Demon devourer of worlds! The crimson light within the black mist flickered violently as it became aware of the danger. Black energy surged outward, exuding a cold, malevolent aura that caused the space around it to collapse under its influence. Boom! The fire formation and the black energy collided with a thunderous crash, shaking the heavens and earth. Fiery tongues and dark beams swept across the landscape, flattening several nearby mountains in an instant. The destructive power was truly terrifying. Bang! A massive dark hand suddenly burst forth, slamming into the crimson cauldron with a tremendous impact. The cauldron flew backward, crashing into the ground with a thunderous boom, creating a colossal crater thousands of feet wide. Haha, your cauldron is weaker than it used to be. The shrill voice laughed mockingly from within the black mist. Is it? The crimson-robed man muttered hoarsely. Crimson light glowed from his hollow eyes, and with a wave of his hand, 8 beams of crimson light shot out from the cauldron. These lights quickly merged in the sky, transforming into 8 crimson plaques. Lin Dong's eyes narrowed as he gazed at the plaques. To his surprise, they were identical to the crimson plaque he had obtained earlier. Whoosh! Whoosh! The crimson plaques shot out, ultimately suspending themselves above 8 massive volcanoes in the area. The ground trembled as torrents of lava erupted from the volcanoes, forming 8 enormous molten gates in the sky. These 8 lava gates hovered in midair, clearly creating a terrifying formation. However, one corner in the northeast was missing, indicating that the formation was incomplete. Everyone, leave this place. The molten lava surged through the sky, heating the very air until it was almost unbearable. Some people could already feel their bodies becoming scorching hot. Amidst this inferno, the hoarse voice of the crimson-robed man echoed through the air. Buzz. As his voice fell, the space around them began to twist, forming several spatial vortices. Quick, go! Upon seeing the spatial vortices appear, countless people across the sky rushed into them, desperate to escape. In a battle of this magnitude, even the slightest contact with the combatants would result in certain death. At this point, no one cared anymore about the ancient treasures hidden here. You all should go too, Lin Dong said in a low voice to Ying Huanhuan and the others. What about you? Ying Huanhuan asked urgently, sensing that Lin Dong intended to stay behind. Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'll come find you once I'm done here. Lin Dong reassured her quickly. His eyes then narrowed sharply as he noticed Yuan Cang and his two companions sneaking toward the fallen crimson cauldron in the distance. These three scoundrels were trying to steal the cauldron. Go! EngSubs also noticed Yuan Cang's movements, her expression shifting slightly. They had all witnessed the terrifying power of the cauldron earlier. If Yuan Cang and his companions obtained it, it would be extremely dangerous for them. However, EngSubs knew that staying behind wouldn't help much, so she decisively grabbed Ying Huanhuan and the others, swiftly pulling them into a spatial vortex. Phew! Seeing EngSubs and the others retreat, Lin Dong finally let out a sigh of relief. His expression darkened as he turned his gaze back toward Yuan Cang and his group. These three had already caused so much trouble, yet they still wanted to steal treasures, truly shameless. No matter what, that cauldron couldn't fall into their hands. The sky above the mountain range was now a scene of utter chaos. Spatial vortices continued to form as people scrambled to escape the battlefield. However, a few individuals, driven by greed, did not flee. Their eyes were all locked on the giant cauldron lying on the ground, glinting with intense desire. Having witnessed the crimson-robed man unleash the cauldron's terrifying power, they knew it had to be an immensely powerful pure primordial treasure. If they could obtain it, their strength would soar. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the air, the sound of wind rushing past could be heard as several figures, unable to suppress their greed any longer, rushed toward the crimson cauldron. Lin Dong frowned slightly as he watched, but he didn't act immediately. While the cauldron was certainly a precious treasure, if it could be obtained so easily, that would be ridiculous. Besides, the crimson-robed man was still the cauldron's master. Even though he was busy fighting the black mist creature, he could effortlessly make those greedy individuals pay a steep price with just a thought. You're still here? A graceful figure approached Lin Dong from a distance, glancing at him with mild surprise. You didn't leave either, Lin Dong replied with a smile toward Ling Qingzhu. I have no interest in that cauldron. I just want to observe the battle, Ling Qingzhu said calmly, her gaze shifting to the distant fight. If that creature escapes, it will cause no small amount of trouble. She didn't know exactly what the black mist creature was, but its aura was clearly far from benevolent. If it broke free from its seal, all those who entered the alien demon region would likely face a grim fate. Lin Dong nodded slightly. He understood that if these creatures weren't absolute threats, the ancient powerhouses of the world wouldn't have gathered together to fight them back in the day. With these thoughts swirling in his mind, Lin Dong's eyes turned toward the other side of the sky. There, the 8 molten gates had completed the formation. The crimson lava surged, creating a massive lava screen that cascaded down from the heavens, forming an incredibly majestic sight. Boom! Boom! Faced with the encircling lava gates, the black mist creature began to resist fiercely. Waves of black mist surged out, its freezing cold energy continuously eroding the scorching lava. However, the black mist creature seemed to fear the molten gates. Its attacks grew more labored, and the mocking laughter from earlier had completely vanished. Suspended between the 8 molten gates, the crimson-robed man's sharp gaze remained fixed on the black mist below. Despite his formidable stance, his expression was far from relaxed. His eyes frequently glanced toward the incomplete corner of the formation, a barely noticeable trace of worry flickering in them. Whoosh! Meanwhile, a dozen figures had already reached the fallen crimson cauldron. But before they could make a move, a powerful gust of wind swept over them, sending them all flying. Yuan Cang, don't push your luck. That cauldron doesn't belong to your Yuan Sect. The dozen or so people who had been thrown back glared furiously in the direction of the gust, their expressions darkening as they shouted angrily. It wasn't before, but now it is, Lei Qian said with a cold smile. I suggest you all leave before you get yourselves into trouble, Ling Zhen added with a smile. Move. Sever the cauldron's connection to the crimson-robed man. He's busy fighting that creature and can't intervene. Once we take the cauldron, we'll leave. Yuan Cang ordered coldly, his eyes burning with desire as he gazed at the crimson cauldron. Lei Qian and Ling Zhen quickly nodded in agreement. The three of them each tossed out a horn-shaped object that extended into a barrier of light, encasing the entire crimson cauldron. Faint sound waves rippled across the barrier, suggesting that these horns were likely spirit treasures of some sort. The light barrier enveloped the cauldron, and its radiant glow dimmed noticeably, as if its connection to something had been severed. Move it! Yuan Cang and his companions were overjoyed, ready to take the cauldron. But just as they were about to act, the face of the crimson-robed man, standing amidst the molten gates, suddenly twisted in anger. His gaze shot toward the cauldron, fury blazing in his eyes. Boom! At that exact moment, the black mist creature, which had been curled up below, surged upward with overwhelming force. This time, it concentrated all its efforts on the weak corner of the formation, launching a frenzied assault on the incomplete section of the array. Boom! Boom! When the crimson-robed man saw this, his face changed drastically. He clenched his fist, and from the 8 lava gates, terrifying beams of molten light shot out, crossing and striking the mass of black mist. Zzz. The beams smashed into the black mist, and a sharp wail echoed out. However, the black mist creature did not retreat. Instead, it pushed forward, taking the brunt of the attack in its desperate attempt to break through the missing corner of the formation. Once it escaped the array, it would finally be free. Seeing the black mist creature's relentless charge, the crimson-robed man frantically increased the intensity of his attacks, trying to block it at all costs. He knew that if it broke free from the formation, even he wouldn't be able to trap it again. Boom! Boom! Explosive attacks battered the endless black mist, but the creature continued drawing closer to the weakened corner of the array. Ha! Ha! Old Heavenburner, it looks like your lava fire gate formation is missing a gate. It seems my escape is inevitable. A shrill voice echoed from the black mist as it neared the weak point of the formation. The crimson-robed man's dried face twitched as he tried to summon the cauldron from afar. But the cauldron, bound by the strange spirit treasures Yuan Cang and his group used, only trembled slightly, unable to respond properly. Damn those scoundrels! Lin Dong's expression darkened as he witnessed the scene. Didn't they realize how much trouble they'd cause if this creature escaped? The black mist is about to break through the formation, Ling Qingzhu said urgently, her voice tinged with concern. Lin Dong's eyes flashed, and in the next instant, he stepped forward decisively. Clenching his hand, a crimson plaque appeared. Ling Qingzhu stared in surprise as Lin Dong flicked the plaque outward. Senior! At Lin Dong's shout, the crimson-robed man's attention shifted. He immediately noticed the crimson plaque flying toward him, and a look of surprise and joy flashed across his withered face. So, you obtained the missing gate. The crimson-robed man gave Lin Dong a long look before waving his sleeve. The plaque flew to the last of the 8 volcanoes, where it hovered. In an instant, another massive lava gate formed, completing the array. Boom! As soon as the final lava gate materialized, the entire sky turned a deep crimson. Torrents of molten lava erupted, coalescing into a towering molten mountain above the array. A terrifying energy wave rippled through the air. Looks like even the heavens don't want you to escape. The crimson-robed man looked down at the black mist creature, which had been forced back by the immense energy of the lava mountain. A grim smile appeared on his withered face. Curse you! A furious voice rang out from within the black mist, clearly enraged by this sudden turn of events. It had been so close to escaping, only to be thwarted at the last moment. That boy! Within the black mist, crimson eyes glared in Lin Dong's direction, a venomous growl barely audible. With the array now complete, the creature had lost its chance to escape and would once again be suppressed. This time, you won't escape again. Hovering above, the crimson-robed man's raspy voice echoed as he waved his sleeve. The towering molten mountain descended, aiming to crush the black mist creature. Zzz. The black mist creature struggled fiercely, but its efforts were in vain. The molten mountain crashed down, shattering the space around it. Lava beams shot out from the base of the mountain, forming a prison that enveloped the creature and pulled it toward the mountain's core. New. Boom. The creature's wails were drowned out as the molten mountain slammed into the ground, causing the earth to collapse. The lava quickly cooled, solidifying into a glowing red mountain. The black mist creature was once again sealed beneath it. Phew. Lin Dong let out a breath of relief as he watched the black mist creature being sealed. But just as he was about to relax, his expression shifted. He saw that Yuan Cang and his two companions had already lifted the crimson cauldron and were rushing toward one of the spatial vortices to escape. Humph! Before Lin Dong could react, the crimson-robed man turned around, his face dark with cold fury. With an icy gaze, the crimson-robed man extended his hand and clenched it tightly. Buzz! In response, the crimson cauldron trembled violently. A terrifying energy wave erupted from it, shattering the 3 spirit treasure horns that Yuan Cang and his companions had used to bind the cauldron. Go! Yuan Cang's pupil shrank, but he made a swift decision. Without any hesitation, he shouted an order and dashed toward the spatial vortex. Behind him, Lei Qian and Ling Zhan, their faces pale, followed closely. The crimson-robed man's eyes gleamed with red light. With a wave of his sleeve, the giant cauldron shot into the air, and a fiery beam of light erupted from it, hurtling toward Yuan Cang and his companions just as they were about to enter the vortex. Boom! The explosive force knocked the trio backward. Their faces turned deathly pale as they spat out blood. Terrified, they didn't dare linger and, using the momentum of the blast, they dove into the vortex, disappearing in an extremely pitiful state. After driving away Yuan Cang and his group, the crimson-robed man's gaze turned to the other onlookers who still remained in the area. With a wave of his sleeve, a gust of wind swept them up, forcefully tossing them into the remaining spatial vortices. Lin Dong watched as those still lingering were thrown out of the area in disgrace. He couldn't help but grin at the sight. But then, he noticed that the crimson-robed man's gaze had shifted toward him and Ling Qingzhu. Ahem. I'll just... Feeling the man's stare, Lin Dong coughed awkwardly and was about to quietly leave when the crimson-robed man spoke. Young one, I must thank you. Lin Dong was momentarily stunned. Then he shrugged and replied, It was just luck that I obtained your missing gate. Besides, if that thing had escaped, it would have caused endless trouble. You know what that thing is? The crimson-robed man's withered face flashed with surprise. I've encountered something similar before. It called itself King, Lin Dong explained, referring to the entity that had been sealed within the Great Wilderness Monument. King. The crimson-robed man's face changed instantly upon hearing the word. In a flash, he appeared before Lin Dong, his deep-set eyes staring at him intently. Moments later, he suddenly reached out and grabbed Lin Dong's wrist. Lin Dong was startled by his actions, but given the vast difference in their strength, he forced himself to stay calm. There was no way he could resist this ancient being. The crimson-robed man grasped Lin Dong's arm, his gaze flickering rapidly. After a long while, he slowly released his grip. His lips moved slightly, and a voice, only audible to Lin Dong, echoed in his mind. I didn't expect you to possess the devouring Ancestral Talisman and the Ancestral Stone. Lin Dong's heart trembled slightly. He wasn't surprised that the crimson-robed man had detected the devouring Ancestral Talisman, but the mention of the Ancestral Stone, could it be referring to the Stone Talisman? Senior, what exactly is the function of the Ancestral Stone? Lin Dong hesitated briefly before wrapping his voice in primordial energy and sending it to the crimson-robed man. The crimson-robed man pondered for a moment, his gaze suddenly shifting toward Ling Qingzhu. Sensing his look, her clear eyes instantly showed a hint of wariness. Without waiting for him to speak, she floated backward. I'll just take a look around. Watching Ling Qingzhu depart, Lin Dong couldn't help but feel a bit awkward. He was reminded of an incident 5 years ago, in the ancient tomb of the Great Yin Dynasty, where an encounter with a long-dead nirvana expert had led to some rather ridiculous circumstances. It seemed that Ling Qingzhu was still wary, like one who had once been bitten by a snake and now feared even the sight of rope. Once Ling Qingzhu had moved away, the crimson-robed man shifted, landing atop the mountain of solidified lava. Lin Dong quickly followed. I still have some awareness left, so I'll tell you a few things. The crimson-robed man sat down cross-legged, his voice hoarse. Senior, your consciousness won't last? Lin Dong frowned as he asked. To be precise, I have long since perished. I merely used certain methods to preserve a bit of life force, turning me into this half-dead state. But now that the creature has been suppressed again, it won't be long before my consciousness begins to fade. Should you return here in the future, you may only find a puppet guarding this mountain, acting purely on instinct. The crimson-robed man spoke calmly, as if unafraid of death. Lin Dong felt a deep respect for this ancient powerhouse. Such magnanimity was indeed admirable. When facing true calamity, some are forced to put aside their grievances. During that battle between heaven and earth, the entire world was nearly destroyed. In the end, it was Lord Ancestral Talisman Master who shattered the cycle of reincarnation and saved this world. The crimson-robed man's face twisted into a difficult smile as he spoke. Ancestral Talisman Master? Lin Dong was momentarily stunned. Who could command such respect from this ancient being? He was the savior of this world. If he hadn't burned his reincarnation and sacrificed himself to seal the dimensional rift, that battle would have dragged on for countless years, the crimson-robed man said with a faint smile. And the ancestral stone in your possession is something left behind by Lord Ancestral Talisman Master. Oh. Lin Dong was moved. He had always known that the stone talisman had a remarkable origin, but he hadn't expected it to be left behind by the leader of the ancient battle for the world, the Ancestral Talisman Master. The ancestral stone sealed 3 kings during that war, but it was severely damaged in the process. Now, it is in a dormant state. Whether you can awaken it depends on your fate, the crimson-robed man explained slowly. Lin Dong nodded. The battle back then wasn't truly won. It was merely a bitter fight to preserve this world. The alien demons will never give up. One day, there may be another great war. When that time comes, it will be up to you and your generation to fight, the crimson-robed man said hoarsely. Lin Dong remained silent. Such matters seemed far beyond his current capabilities. Fate has brought us together. Since you have obtained the ancestral stone, perhaps it is Lord Ancestral Talisman Master's way of choosing you. Soon, I will lose my consciousness. There are some things I can give you. The crimson-robed man raised his hand, and the massive crimson cauldron shrank rapidly, eventually becoming palm-sized and landing in his hand. This is the heaven-burning cauldron, my life-bound treasure. However, I won't be needing it anymore. Though you won't be able to fully control it with your current strength, it will still be a powerful weapon. Staring at the cauldron floating toward him, Lin Dong hesitated for a moment, then nodded silently. He accepted it carefully, without any pretense. After handing over the cauldron, the crimson-robed man paused, then extended his hand again. A dense life force gathered in his palm, condensing into a pure white pill the size of a dragon's eye, from which an astonishing vitality radiated. If you refine this, it will significantly boost your strength. However, you won't be able to absorb it completely just yet. Most of its power will remain dormant in your body, benefiting you over time. Lin Dong was taken aback. As this life force left the crimson-robed man, his already withered face turned even more ashen. Senior. Lin Dong pressed his lips together, clearly struggling to accept such generous gifts. I trust the ancestral stone's choice, the crimson-robed man said with a faint smile. Lin Dong hesitated, but finally nodded, respectfully taking the pill. As soon as it entered his hand, his primordial energy surged within him. May I ask Senior's name? Lin Dong asked with a bow, after accepting the pill. My name is Fen Tian, though most call me the heaven-burning old ghost, the crimson-robed man said with a smile. Senior Fen Tian's great kindness will never be forgotten, Lin Dong said solemnly. Heh, there's no need to remember an old ghost's deeds. However, I do have one favor to ask, Fen Tian said. Please, ask anything. Take good care of that friend of yours, Fen Tian said hoarsely. Lin Dong's eyes flashed, and he immediately understood that Fen Tian was referring to Ying Huanhuan. Did you know her before? Lin Dong asked, hesitating. I was once guided by a great figure, Fen Tian replied with a smile. It seems she succeeded in her reincarnation, truly worthy of being the most valued disciple of Lord Ancestral Talisman Master. Lin Dong's heart trembled upon hearing this. He bowed deeply. Senior, rest assured, I will protect her. Thank you. Fen Tian smiled, but exhaustion soon overtook his expression. His eyes began to close. Senior, is there any way to save you? Lin Dong asked urgently. Fen Tian's gaze softened. He seemed to smile again, but his eyes closed completely. A hoarse voice lingered in Lin Dong's ears. When you've understood reincarnation, come back here,